Alex had always considered themselves an ordinary person, someone who lived a quiet life without much drama. They were content with their routines and enjoyed spending time with family and close friends. But everything changed when they inherited a small lakeside cabin from their late uncle. The cabin wasn't grand or luxurious. It was cozy, with wooden walls, creaky floors, and a stunning view of the lake. But it held countless memories. Alex remembered summers spent fishing with their uncle, evenings roasting marshmallows by the fire, and mornings waking up to the sound of birds chirping. It was more than just property. It was a piece of their childhood. However, inheriting the cabin came with challenges. Alex didn't have the time or resources to maintain it properly. The thought of letting it sit empty felt wrong, but renting it out seemed like too much work. That's when Karen stepped in. She was one of those people who always seemed to know everyone in the neighborhood. Friendly, talkative, and full of ideas, Karen had a knack for inserting herself into situations where she could help. One evening at a casual get-together, Alex mentioned the dilemma over the cabin. Without missing a beat, Karen leaned forward, her eyes lighting up. "You should let me handle it," she said confidently. "I've been managing properties for years. Airbnb is my specialty." At first, Alex hesitated. They barely knew Karen beyond surface-level conversations at barbecues and holiday parties. But Karen's enthusiasm was hard to ignore. She painted a picture of how easy everything could be. She cleaned the cabin, decorated, listed on Airbnb, and even deal with guests. All Alex would have to do was collect a share of the profits. "Think about it," Karen added with a warm smile. "You won't have to lift a finger. Plus, you'll make some extra money while keeping the place alive." The idea sounded almost magical. Alex had heard about Airbnb, but never considered using it themselves. Managing bookings, cleaning schedules, and guest communication sounded overwhelming. With Karen taking care of all that, Alex wouldn't have to worry. And honestly, it felt good to trust someone who seemed so capable. After a few days of thinking it over, Alex decided to give Karen a chance. They handed over a spare set of keys, gave her basic information about the cabin, and hoped for the best. Karen wasted no time getting started. Within a week, she sent Alex photos of the cabin looking cleaner and tittier than ever before. She proudly announced that she'd already listed it online and received several inquiries. "See, told you I take care of everything," she wrote in a text message, followed by a string of cheerful emojis. For the first time since inheriting the cabin, Alex felt relieved. Maybe this arrangement really would turn out to be a win-win situation. Little did they know, trusting Karen was the beginning of a story far more complicated and infuriating than anything they could have imagined. For the first few months, everything seemed to be going smoothly. Karen kept Alex updated with messages and emails about how well the cabin was doing on Airbnb. She sent pictures of happy guests lounging by the lake, enjoying barbecues on the deck, and admiring the sunset. "It's such a hit," Karen wrote enthusiastically. "People love it here." Along with the updates, she transferred small amounts of money into Alex's account each month, explaining that these were the profits after deducting her management fees. At first, Alex didn't question anything. The numbers seemed reasonable, and Karen's excitement made it easy to believe that the arrangement was working perfectly. But as time went on, little things started to bother Alex. For one, the payments varied wildly from month to month. Some months brought in decent sums, while others yielded almost nothing. When Alex asked why certain months had no bookings despite being peak season, Karen brushed it off with vague explanations like, "Oh, there was a plumbing issue that week," or "I blocked off dates for deep cleaning." These excuses felt odd, but not alarming enough to raise suspicion. At least, not yet. Then came the cleaning costs. Each month, Karen deducted what seemed like exorbitant amounts for maintenance and housekeeping. "You wouldn't believe how messy some guests can be," she once texted, attaching a photo of a trashed kitchen. While Alex appreciated that Karen was handling the dirty work, the bills felt unusually high. A quick online search revealed that professional cleaning services in the area charged far less than what Karen claimed. Still, Alex hesitated to confront her. After all, Karen had been so helpful up until now, and questioning her might come across as ungrateful. The real red flag appeared when Alex tried to check the Airbnb listing themselves. They created an account and searched for their cabin, only to find nothing. Confused, they asked Karen about it. Her response was immediate and dismissive. "Don't worry about the technical stuff," she replied. "It's all taken care of. Trust me, you don't want to deal with the back-end details. Just enjoy the extra cash." Something about her tone rubbed Alex the wrong way. Why wouldn't she share access to the listing? Wasn't transparency part of managing someone else's property? Alex decided to dig a little deeper. They politely requested login credentials to the Airbnb account, explaining that they wanted to see the booking calendar and guest reviews firsthand. Karen's reaction was unexpected. Instead of complying, she grew defensive. "Look, I'm doing you a favor here," she snapped in a rare moment of irritation. "If you're going to micromanage me, maybe this isn't worth my time." Taken aback, Alex dropped the subject, for now, but the uneasy feeling lingered, gnawing at the edges of their trust. To make matters worse, Alex began noticing subtle changes during their rare visits to the cabin. Personal items that used to sit on shelves, a framed photo of their uncle, a handmade quilt passed down through generations, were missing. When Alex asked about them, Karen shrugged it off. "I put your stuff in storage to make space for renters. Don't worry, it's safe." Safe where? Alex wondered. And why hadn't Karen mentioned this earlier? Every conversation with Karen became a balancing act between gratitude and growing doubt. On one hand, Alex owed her for keeping the cabin operational. On the other, something didn't add up. The inconsistencies piled up like puzzle pieces that refused to fit together. As weeks turned into months, Alex found themselves lying awake at night, replaying interactions with Karen in their mind. Had they made a mistake trusting her so blindly? What exactly was she hiding? The answers remained elusive, but one thing was clear. Karen wasn't telling the whole truth. The nagging feeling that something was off with Karen's management of the cabin had been building for months, but Alex couldn't ignore it any longer. One weekend, they decided to visit the cabin unannounced. They told themselves it was just a casual trip, to check on the property and maybe spend some quiet time by the lake. But deep down, they knew they were looking for answers. What they found when they arrived, however, was nothing short of shocking. As Alex pulled into the driveway, their hearts sank. A car they didn't recognize was parked outside, and the sound of laughter drifted from inside the cabin. Confused, Alex walked up to the door and knocked. A moment later, it opened to reveal a young couple holding cups of coffee. "Oh, hi," the woman said cheerfully. "Are you here for the cleaning crew? We're checked in until tomorrow." Alex froze, caught completely off guard. "Cleaning crew?" they stammered. I own this place. Who are you?" The couple exchanged puzzled looks before the man spoke up. "We booked this through Airbnb. Everything's legit. We even left a review last night." He pulled out his phone and showed Alex the listing. A sleek page filled with professional photos of the cabin, glowing reviews, and a description that barely resembled the cozy, rustic retreat Alex remembered. The interior shown in the pictures looked modern, almost unrecognizable. Sleek furniture, minimalist decor, and trendy lighting fixtures replaced the warm, homely vibe Alex had always loved. Stunned, Alex stepped inside, and what they saw made their stomach churn. The cabin was transformed. Gone were the family heirlooms. The quilt, the photo frames, the little knickknacks that held sentimental value. In their place were generic, store-bought items that looked like they belonged in a catalog. Even the walls had been repainted, now a cool gray instead of the warm beige Alex remembered. It felt less like a cherished family space and more like a rented showroom. Alex's mind raced as they tried to process what was happening. How could Karen have done this without permission? And why would she change the entire character of the cabin? Before they could think too much about it, they heard a familiar voice behind them. "What are you doing here?" Karen asked sharply, stepping into view. She looked flustered, her usual confident demeanor replaced by something closer to panic. "I came to check on my property," Alex replied, trying to keep their voice steady despite the rising anger. "Care to explain why strangers are living here? And why everything looks so different?" Karen crossed her arms defensively. "Different? I upgraded it. You should be thanking me. This place was outdated when I took over. I invested my own money to make it profitable. Do you know how hard it is to compete with other listings on Airbnb? Now it's finally making good money." "Making money, you mean?" Alex shot back, their patience wearing thin. "You had no right to redecorate or kick out renters without telling me. And where are my things? My uncle's belongings. Where did you put them?" Karen rolled her eyes, clearly annoyed. "Your things were cluttering the place. I stored them somewhere safe. Don't worry about it. Honestly, Alex, you weren't using this cabin anyway. I've been the one keeping it alive, bringing in income. Maybe you should let someone who actually cares take over." Her words hit like a slap. Alex stared at her, disbelief mixing with fury. Take over? Was she serious? This wasn't just property. It was a piece of their family history, entrusted to Alex by their uncle. And now, standing in this unfamiliar version of the cabin, surrounded by strangers and faced with Karen's audacity, Alex realized they were dealing with someone who felt entitled to far more than she deserved. Whatever trust had existed between them was shattered, leaving only confusion, betrayal, and the daunting task of figuring out how to fix this mess. The confrontation at the cabin left Alex reeling. They spent the drive home replaying every word Karen had said. Her smug expression burned into their mind. The more they thought about it, the angrier they became. How could she justify taking over their property like that? It wasn't just about redecorating or renting it out. It was as if she believed she had some kind of ownership over it. Alex tried calling her later that evening to demand answers, but Karen didn't pick up. Texts went unanswered too. For days, there was nothing, just silence. At first, Alex assumed Karen was avoiding them out of guilt or embarrassment. But when weeks passed without any communication, a new fear began creeping in. What if Karen wasn't planning to back down? What if she thought she'd already won? Then came the letter. It arrived on a gray Monday morning, slipped inconspicuously into Alex's mailbox among bills and junk mail. At first glance, it looked ordinary, a plain white envelope with no return address. But something about it made Alex uneasy. Opening it felt like peeling back layers of dread. Inside was a formal notice from an attorney, written in cold, impersonal language. According to the document, Karen had filed paperwork claiming partial ownership of the cabin. Her argument was simple yet outrageous. Because she'd managed, maintained, and invested in the property for months, she now considered herself entitled to it. Alex read the letter twice, then 3 times, unable to fully grasp what they were seeing. Was this even legal? Could someone simply declare ownership of another person's property based on flimsy reasoning like this? The audacity of it all was staggering. Alex felt a mix of emotions: anger, disbelief, betrayal. But beneath it all was a growing sense of panic. If Karen was willing to take things this far, what else might she try? Determined to fight back, Alex started researching online. They scoured forums, articles, and legal advice websites, trying to understand how such claims worked. To their relief, they discovered that Karen's case likely wouldn't hold up in court. Property laws were clear. Unless Alex had signed over rights to the cabin, which they absolutely hadn't, Karen had no legitimate claim. Still, fighting her would require evidence, time, and money, resources Alex wasn't sure they had. As they dug deeper, Alex realized they needed professional help. That same day, they called a lawyer recommended by a friend. After explaining the situation during a lengthy phone call, the lawyer agreed to take on the case. "This isn't uncommon," the lawyer reassured Alex. "People sometimes exploit loopholes or misunderstandings to stake false claims. Don't worry, we'll sort this out." With the lawyer's guidance, Alex began gathering evidence. They reached out to past Airbnb guests who had stayed at the cabin, asking for copies of their booking confirmations and screenshots of the listing. Some were hesitant to get involved, but others were happy to help, especially after hearing Alex's side of the story. One guest even sent photos showing the interior before Karen's renovations, proving that the cabin had once looked completely different. Meanwhile, Alex hired a private investigator to track Karen's financial transactions related to the property. Receipts for furniture purchases, cleaning services, and other expenses poured in, painting a clearer picture of how much Karen had profited while cutting Alex out of the loop. Every piece of evidence strengthened Alex's position, but it also deepened their frustration. How could someone act so entitled, so shamelessly manipulative? Feeling overwhelmed, Alex decided to share their story online. They posted anonymously on social media, detailing everything from Karen's initial offer to manage the cabin to her shocking attempt to claim ownership. Within hours, the post blew up. Strangers flooded the comments section with messages of support, sharing similar experiences and offering advice. Someone suggested tagging local news outlets, which led to reporters reaching out for interviews. Suddenly, Alex's personal nightmare became public, and Karen's actions were under intense scrutiny. For the first time since discovering Karen's betrayal, Alex felt a flicker of hope. Maybe the tide was turning. Maybe justice was possible after all. But one thing was certain. Karen's days of acting untouchable were numbered. The viral post changed everything. What started as Alex's private struggle against Karen quickly became a public spectacle, drawing attention from all corners of the internet. People were outraged by Karen's behavior, labeling her the poster child for entitlement and manipulation. Comments poured in, some offering words of encouragement to Alex, others expressing disbelief at how brazenly Karen had acted. "How dare she think she can steal someone else's property?" One commenter wrote. "This is insane." The sheer volume of support gave Alex a renewed sense of strength, but it also brought an unexpected twist. Pressure mounted on Karen. At first, Karen tried to brush off the backlash. She deleted her social media accounts and stopped answering calls from unfamiliar numbers. But avoiding the storm wasn't easy. Friends and acquaintances began distancing themselves, uncomfortable being associated with someone embroiled in such controversy. Local businesses, too, turned their backs. Coffee shops refused to serve her, and neighbors whispered behind her back whenever she stepped outside. It was clear that Karen hadn't anticipated this level of public shaming. Her confident facade started to crack. Behind closed doors, though, Karen wasn't ready to give up. Realizing the mounting evidence against her, she reached out to Alex through a mutual friend, attempting to negotiate a settlement. "Tell Alex I'll return the cabin," she said, her tone uncharacteristically meek. "But only if they drop all charges and agree not to pursue legal action." To Karen, this seemed like a reasonable compromise, a way to save face while avoiding further humiliation. But Alex wasn't about to let her off so easily. When the message reached Alex, they immediately consulted their lawyer. "Don't entertain any deals unless we have full control of the property and compensation for damages," the lawyer advised. Armed with this guidance, Alex rejected Karen's offer outright. They weren't interested in bargaining. They wanted justice. Every day, more evidence piled up against Karen, solidifying Alex's case. Guest testimonies, financial records, and even photos showing the original state of the cabin painted a damning picture of her actions. As the court date approached, the tension between the two parties grew palpable. Karen's attempts to justify herself fell flat under scrutiny. In legal filings, her arguments came across as desperate and baseless. The judge reviewed the documents and listened to both sides during preliminary hearings, but it was obvious where the truth lay. Alex held the deed to the property, and no amount of creative storytelling could change that fact. Meanwhile, the public continued to rally behind Alex. News outlets covered every development in the case, amplifying the narrative of a hard-working individual standing up to someone who thought she could take what didn't belong to her. Journalists highlighted the emotional significance of the cabin, emphasizing its role as a cherished family heirloom rather than just another piece of real estate. This human element resonated deeply with audiences, turning Alex into a symbol of resilience and integrity. Finally, after months of preparation and countless sleepless nights, the verdict arrived. The court ruled decisively in Alex's favor, invalidating Karen's claims entirely. Not only did the judge order her to vacate the property immediately, but she was also required to pay restitution for lost income, unauthorized renovations, and other damages. For Alex, it was a bittersweet victory. While they had reclaimed their cabin, the process had been exhausting and emotionally draining. Still, knowing that Karen's schemes had been exposed and punished brought a measure of closure. As news of the ruling spread, the online community erupted in celebration. "Justice served," read one popular comment. Another added, "Karen got exactly what she deserved." Though Alex appreciated the overwhelming support, they couldn't help but feel drained by the ordeal. Fighting for something so personal shouldn't have been this hard. Yet, through it all, they learned valuable lessons about trust, accountability, and the importance of protecting what matters most, even when it means going head-to-head with someone who feels entitled to take it. With the legal battle finally over, Alex thought they could breathe a sigh of relief. The court's decision had been clear and decisive. Karen had no claim to the cabin, and she was ordered to pay restitution for her actions. But reclaiming the property wasn't as simple as walking in and taking back what was rightfully theirs. The emotional toll of the ordeal lingered, and the physical state of the cabin made it clear that restoring it to its former self would require time, effort, and patience. When Alex first stepped inside after the ruling, they were struck by how alien the space still felt. The sleek furniture Karen had installed might have appealed to renters, but it bore no resemblance to the cozy retreat Alex remembered. Even worse, many of the family heirlooms Karen claimed to have stored safely were nowhere to be found. When confronted, Karen shrugged it off, saying she couldn't remember where she put them. Whether this was another lie or simply negligence, Alex would never know. But the loss stung deeply. Those items weren't just things. They were memories, pieces of their uncle's legacy now gone forever. Determined to reclaim the essence of the cabin, Alex rolled up their sleeves and got to work. They hired a contractor to repaint the walls, choosing the same warm beige color that had once greeted visitors with open arms. New curtains replaced the minimalist blinds, soft rugs covered the bare floors, and shelves were stocked with books and knickknacks collected over the years. Slowly but surely, the cabin began to feel like home again. Each small change brought Alex closer to healing, reminding them why the property was so special in the first place. But the scars of the experience ran deeper than paint and decor. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. Alex found themselves second-guessing every interaction, every offer of help. Friends joked about how protective Alex had become, teasingly calling them the fortress master. Beneath the humor, though, lay a sobering truth. Alex had learned the hard way that kindness without boundaries can lead to exploitation. From now on, they vowed to approach relationships and agreements with caution. In interviews following the case, Alex opened up about the lessons they'd learned. "I never imagined something like this could happen," they admitted during one talk with a local reporter. "Karen seemed so helpful at first, but looking back, I realize I gave her too much freedom without setting clear rules. If you're letting someone manage your property or anything valuable, put everything in writing. Be specific about what's expected and what's off limits. Don't leave room for interpretation." Their story resonated with people far beyond their small community. Online forums buzzed with discussions about how to avoid similar situations, while news programs featured experts offering advice on protecting personal assets. Some shared their own horror stories of entitled acquaintances or shady business partners, expressing gratitude for Alex's courage in speaking out. Others praised Alex for turning a painful experience into a teachable moment, inspiring others to stand firm against manipulation. Despite the support, Alex remained cautious about future interactions. They decided to take full control of managing the cabin themselves, enlisting the help of trusted friends for occasional maintenance. Security cameras were installed both inside and outside, ensuring no one could sneak in unnoticed. A lockbox replaced the spare key system, giving Alex complete oversight of who entered the property. These measures may have seemed excessive to some, but to Alex, they were necessary safeguards against ever feeling vulnerable again. As life slowly returned to normal, Alex reflected on how much they'd grown through the ordeal. They missed the simplicity of trusting others without hesitation, but they also recognized the strength they'd discovered within themselves. Reclaiming the cabin hadn't just been about winning a legal fight. It was about asserting ownership not only of their property, but also of their voice and decisions. And though the journey had been long and difficult, Alex emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to protect what mattered most. Months after the dust had settled, Alex finally found themselves sitting on the cabin's porch, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the lake. The air was crisp, and the sound of birds chirping filled the silence. For the first time in what felt like forever, they felt at peace. The cabin, once a source of stress and conflict, had been restored to its former glory, though it carried new layers of meaning now. It wasn't just a place of cherished memories. It had become a symbol of resilience, perseverance, and the importance of standing up for oneself. Alex often thought about how much they'd learned throughout the ordeal. Before Karen entered their life, they had trusted people easily, believing that most individuals acted with good intentions. But the betrayal forced them to confront a harsh reality. Not everyone respects boundaries, and some will exploit kindness for personal gain. While this realization made them more cautious, it also gave them a newfound sense of empowerment. They no longer felt like a passive participant in their own story. They were ready to take charge, set limits, and protect what mattered most. Managing the cabin on their own turned out to be both challenging and rewarding. At first, Alex worried they wouldn't be able to handle everything, from cleaning and maintenance to dealing with renters. But they quickly discovered that taking control brought unexpected joys. Reading heartfelt messages from guests who loved the cozy atmosphere reminded Alex why they'd fought so hard to keep the property. One family even wrote to say the cabin had been the perfect setting for their reunion, describing how the warm decor and serene surroundings helped them reconnect after years apart. Those moments reaffirmed Alex's decision to hold on to the cabin, despite all the trouble it had caused. Still, Alex didn't forget the lessons they'd learned. Every rental agreement was meticulously documented, every transaction tracked, and every guest vetted thoroughly. They joined online communities for property owners, sharing tips and advice while learning from others' experiences. Through these connections, Alex realized they weren't alone. Many people had faced similar challenges with dishonest managers or entitled acquaintances. By speaking openly about their own story, they hoped to inspire others to stay vigilant and assertive when it came to protecting their assets. The public reaction to their case continued to surprise Alex. Strangers reached out regularly, thanking them for sharing their journey and offering words of encouragement. Some admitted they'd faced comparable situations but hadn't known how to fight back. Hearing these stories reinforced Alex's belief that their experience, painful as it was, had value beyond their personal life. It sparked important conversations about accountability, trust, and the dangers of leaving things unsaid or undocumented. As time passed, Alex began to view the cabin differently, not just as a retreat or an inheritance, but as a testament to their ability to overcome adversity. They framed copies of the viral post and news articles covering the case, hanging them discreetly in a corner of the living room. To visitors, it might have looked like simple decoration, but to Alex, it served as a reminder of where they'd been and how far they'd come. The scars of the past would always remain, but they no longer defined Alex. Instead, they fueled a quiet determination to move forward with wisdom and grace. On quiet evenings, Alex would sit by the fire, staring into the flames, reflecting on the journey. They thought about their uncle, whose love for the cabin had inspired him to leave it behind for them. Though he wasn't there to see the battle Alex had fought, they knew he'd be proud of how they reclaimed and preserved his legacy. The cabin wasn't just a structure. It was a bridge between generations, a place where memories were made and cherished. Life, Alex realized, is full of challenges, but it's also rich with opportunities to grow stronger. They had faced one of the toughest tests imaginable and emerged victorious, not because they sought revenge, but because they refused to let someone else dictate the outcome of their story. As the fire crackled softly beside them, Alex smiled, knowing they were exactly where they were meant to be.